The Soviets built some of the strongest and biggest muscles the world had ever seen, and it wasn't by accident. But what most people miss is that their approach to muscle building wasn't the same as what you see today. While most people focus on the obvious workouts and exercises, the Soviets were doing things differently, things that rarely get talked about, until now. But first, we need to know which method they actually used. So the first method is called Prilipin's chart. The name sounds like we just walked into a math class for no reason, right? But honestly, it's just a simple way to figure out how many reps you should actually be doing based on your strength. And behind all that, there was this guy, Alexander Sergeyevich Prilipin. He spent like 10 years going through training logs of over 1,000 Soviet weightlifters. Sorry, I had something in my throat there. Think about or imagine how much knowledge this guy has. And what he found was pretty interesting. It's a bit complicated, but I will explain it in a simple way. If you're giving around 70 to 80% of your max, you should be hitting somewhere between 18 to 30 total reps. Push it heavier, like 80 to 90%, and now you're dropping that down to about 10 to 20 reps. But here's the thing. It sounds almost too simple, right? Like you hear it and you think, okay, cool, but why does this even matter? I thought the same at first, but once you actually understand what this is doing to your muscles, it starts to make a lot more sense. So let me break down why this actually works for muscle building. What this chart is basically doing is keeping you in that 70 to 85% range. That should be the goal. Heavy enough that your muscles actually have no choice but to grow, but not so heavy that you burn out after a few reps and call it a day. You're still getting enough volume in, which is the part most people mess up. At my old job, I had a coworker who had the biggest biceps and the most muscle in general. His name was Victor. And everyone was asking him what he did, what his training plan was, and so on. Because he always did a lot of reps and never pushed himself to complete muscle failure, unlike the other guys at the gym who always pushed themselves to the limit but still couldn't keep up with Victor. Because look, it's not just about lifting heavy, it's about giving the muscle enough work to respond. That mixture of tension and volume, that's what actually builds muscle. And another thing, the chart kind of puts a limit on you. So you're not just going in there doing ego reps and frying your nervous system every session. Which, let's be honest, a lot of people do. And because of that, you recover faster. You can train more often, hit the same muscle again sooner. And that's where things really start adding up over time. More frequency, more quality volume, controlled intensity, and it just stacks. The Soviets weren't just guessing here. Prilipin built this stuff around what actually works on the body, but interestingly, they didn't just stick to one method, they had layers to this. So if you've been doing the same routine for months and nothing's really changing, like we all have at one time or another, stay with me on this part. It's called wave loading. Now normally your program just adds a little bit of weight each week, nice and predictable. But the Soviets didn't do that. Their training load could actually jump one week, then drop hard the next, and then change again in a way you didn't see coming. Because if your body always knows what's coming, it gets comfortable. It's the same reason your morning drive feels effortless after 2 weeks. The brain stops paying attention to things it has already solved. Maybe that was a bad example, but you know what I mean. And once it's comfortable, it stops adapting the way you want. But when the load hits in a way it didn't expect, now it has to actually adjust, not just surface level, much deeper. And that's what builds muscle that actually lasts. So these were methods that didn't just help them build their muscles, but also made them stronger. But the methods need exercises, and the exercises that the Soviets used for muscle building are not what you're thinking. Most people, when they think about Soviet exercises, immediately picture kettlebell snatches and heavy pulls. I mean, that's basically all you ever see, right? Well, these are also important, but honestly, it's not the full picture. No one really talks about what they were also actually doing beyond those few flashy movements, especially for muscle building. And to be fair, some of the most effective exercises to build muscles are the ones you've probably never even heard of. Starting at your legs with the Glute-Ham Raise. Look, if you do it right, it builds your hamstrings in a way most exercises just don't. Don't worry, we also cover your favorite muscle group, but to get a better picture, let's start with the hamstrings. So here's how to do it. Set your knees on the pad, lock your ankles in, and then slowly lower your body down, controlling it the whole way instead of just dropping. and then you pull yourself back up using your hamstrings. First of all, it's really hard, to be honest. So if you want to go to the next exercise, you can skip this part. Alright, now that the weak men are gone, let me explain it better. Sorry, allergies, you know. It's kind of like a leg curl, but honestly your whole body is the weight this time, which makes it a completely different game. But now you might be thinking, why go through all this when there are easier hamstring exercises? Fair question, but here's the thing. Most hamstring exercises only train one part of the movement. They either work at the hip or at the knee, almost never both together. However, this one works both at the same time, and that's exactly why it feels so different. Imagine two people pulling a rope from opposite ends. The tension just shoots up, right? You have to fight harder just to stay in place. That's basically what's happening here. Your hamstrings are dealing with both sides at once, and honestly, not many exercises can do that. But don't go trying to act all strong on this one. If you start forcing messy reps the next day, don't be surprised if your hamstrings don't even let you walk properly. And keep in mind that this exercise doesn't just build your hamstring, but also your core, calves, and glutes, because your whole body is active the entire time. But to be fair, the Soviets didn't just stop there. They also needed something that built the entire body in a single movement. There is one movement, which was a literal Soviet military competition exercise, not just a gym thing. Soviet military athletes did not just train with it, they competed in it. It's called the long cycle, with a kettlebell or a backpack if you don't have a kettlebell. Here's what you do. Get a good stance and swing the kettlebell back between your legs. Clean it up to your shoulder in the rack position. Take a shallow dip, then drive it overhead until your arm is fully locked out. Bring it back down to the rack, then repeat. It covers traps, shoulders, triceps, glutes, quads, and forearms all at once. And the reason it works so well for muscle is the important thing to know. You can use heavier loads in this movement than in any other kettlebell exercise. And heavier load means a stronger stimulus, and a stronger stimulus means more muscle. So this kettlebell long cycle and Glute-Ham Raise were the most important and effective Soviet movements for muscle building. Apart from these, Soviets did use other exercises that you already know, such as kettlebell snatches, different types of squats, pull-ups, and push-ups. But exercise and training methods are not the only thing that builds muscle. You know what's coming next, right? The nutrition plan. Nutrition plan is more than protein bar. It's good for bones. But before we get into nutrition, we kinda have to address this, because I got many comments under my last video about this topic. Were the Soviets using steroids to build that kind of size? Well, of course not everybody, but some of the weightlifters do. By around 1952, Soviet weightlifters were already using it, and by the early 60s, it wasn't even a question anymore, it was just part of the system. Then, in 1972, the government literally put together a classified document with exact dosages and timelines for athletes. Now, what does that actually mean for you? Honestly, all the training stuff we just talked about still works without any of that. But those 300-pound physiques you're thinking of, those existed in a system where steroids were basically funded and handed out. So if you're training naturally, do not compare your end result to that. Compare your progress to what you were last month. That's the only comparison that actually makes sense. Now let's get into what they were actually eating, because that part is way more useful to you. Breakfast was simple. Porridge, buckwheat or oatmeal, sometimes just bread with cheese. Lunch and dinner were pretty consistent too, around 250 to 300 grams of meat or fish with rice or buckwheat and some vegetables. And every night before bed, tvorog. Basically Russian cottage cheese, just denser and more protein-packed. About 17 grams per 100 grams. And the important part is, it's high in casein. What that means is it digests slowly, releasing protein over 6 to 8 hours while you sleep. Imagine it like this. Instead of eating one big meal and staying hungry the whole night, it's like your body keeps getting small bites automatically while you sleep. So instead of going 7 to 8 hours with nothing and breaking down, it's being fed the whole time. And if you can't find tvorog anywhere, just go with Greek yogurt. Same idea, same slow release, your muscles won't know the difference. And if you actually follow this consistently, you'll build muscle faster than just randomly pushing weights and hoping it works. Shout out to this comment, and if you want to learn more, just click the subscribe button and sign up for my free newsletter. I love writing, so I do it in my free time and put some surprises in there as well because I appreciate everyone who watches my videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.